And I think the main thing for us here in America is we know that there's this shift toward big government here in the United States. And I think, David, what we want to talk about is how crises that we're experiencing here in this country and those overseas are leading toward this consolidation of power that the Bible talks about, that like a G10 is going to come and a leader over the G10, a 10-group nation here, is going to control the world's economy, that we can actually see signs of this coming right now. Start us off.
Well, John, one of the things that's really interesting is that if you listen to the talk from the government, you've been hearing people talk about this crisis, and let's don't waste this crisis. Going back in history, philosophically, people have understood that a crisis can be useful to a tyrant. A crisis is the vehicle that would-be world rulers use to gain power. We've talked about that in Germany. You can go back through all of the major disruptive governments in history, and we're seeing some of that now. For instance, Greece may be the first in the long chain of European nations that could default on their obligations. There is a group of nations known humorously as the Pigs, P-I-I-G-S. It's an acrostic for Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece, and Spain. And then you look to Great Britain and their government, and they have a budget deficit of 11.6% of its GDP. And everywhere you look in Europe, and of course we can't look too far because it's true in our own nation as well, we're finding all kinds of crises that demand some sort of solution. And in each of these political crises, the problem is created largely by growing dependence upon the government to take responsibility for its citizens' well-being.
Yeah, let's stop right there. I think we all know that in 2008, George Bush, at that time, said, we got a crisis, we've got to act, okay? Then President Obama came in and said, unless we come up with this almost $1 trillion worth of a bailout, we're in big trouble. And so you have these crises that are coming, and what has happened is that the government is spending money, and the controls for that spending the money gets into fewer and fewer hands. But these crises control who gets this power. And it has not stopped. I mean, we're still in this problem that we have an economic crisis happening here and across the world, and there's still calls for more controls. Like what?
Well, you know, John, we were talking during the break about how once the government begins to provide something for its citizenry, it's almost impossible for it ever to be reversed. If you go back through all the entitlement programs, everybody's talking about how they're going to reverse the health care program. Well, they're going to have a hard time doing that because once the people get used to something that they consider to be their privileged entitlement, they're not going to give it up. And what we're going to see as we go along is this is kind of like the frog in the kettle. The citizens focus on their own comfort, and they don't notice that more and more of their lives are being controlled by somebody else, and they don't seem to care very much as long as what they're getting continues to happen. You were talking about the extension of the program for unemployment.
Yeah, I think we have extended unemployment benefits to 2 years. You could be out of work for 2 years. Now the question is, when we get to that barrier again, which we're going to get to pretty quick, and jobs aren't being created, how long are we going to extend that? And if you take them off of that, you have all of these people not getting money. They won't be paying their mortgages. They won't be able to get food. And the fact is, now you have a real crisis on your hand.